Hello and welcome to another Total Soccer Show Terminology Special. I am Daryl Grove. I'm joined by Professor Emeritus Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I never fully knew what that meant. What does emeritus mean?
I think it means it's usually someone who's been in a department a long time.
Yeah.
And then you essentially, I think, are still involved, but you don't actually have to do anything.
So it sounds like you give me a title that you're not entirely sure I deserve, or even if you're entirely certain what it means.
But you've definitely earned it.
There we go. I'll take that.
Which is actually a bad start to today's show because we're going to be explaining what terms mean.
Yeah.
I can say that the terms we've got in front of us, which have been suggested by listeners, that they've asked them to be explained, we have researched, we do know what they mean.
There we go.
Or we can offer some explanation.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so.
So we have 9 different pieces of soccer terminology that we're going to explain to you today.
That we do, my friend.
This is the 3rd episode of Terminology, and we will begin with brace.
Yeah.
A few people have asked, what is a brace? Someone even asked, and what do you call a 4-goal game?
Yes.
So everyone knows a brace is 2 goals,
Yep.
right? But why? That's the question, but why? And on my sheet here, it says, Taylor has answer in all caps. So no pressure, Taylor.
Well, Taylor has an answer to the 4 goals.
Oh, I
Yes.
see. All right.
Yeah. For the brace, I mean, yeah, I can answer that one too. It basically means a player scored 2 goals in one game, as far as I understand it, it comes from the Old English. It means a pair of something, usually a bird or an animal, killed in one hunting outing. So it's essentially, if you get like a brace of doves, you've killed 2 doves.
Yeah.
If you get a brace of goals, you
people
score
shoot
2
doves?
goals. Yeah.
The symbolism is terrible.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. Yeah.
But I was thinking more hunting like pheasants kind of thing. Yeah.
That also, yeah.
Do you know why that's a brace, though? Because I have the answer to that.
Give it up.
So the word brace comes from an old French word which means arms. So 2 arms means 2. If you come back, if you've shot 2, if we go with doves, I guess is what we're shooting these days. If you come back from the hunt with 2 doves, I'm going to say pheasant. You come back with 2 pheasant, you have 1 in each arm. That's a brace of doves or pheasants. And to prove I'm not making this up, if I come across the room now, Taylor, and put my arms around you and give you a big hug, what's a word for that?
An embrace.
There you go. Yeah, that's proof that that's where the old word comes from. England used to steal...
Are you afraid that someone's going to argue with you about this?
I just want to underscore it. And also to say that England used to, adapt words and other or cultural things from places like France, but that was all pre-Brexit.
I gotcha. Nicely done. Yes, and then to the second question of what is like the terminology for 4 goals, 5 goals, etc. I think there are varying terms out there.
There's not like an officially adopted one.
I've seen double brace.
There's a football ramble one.
I know. That football ramble one would be a haul.
Yeah.
And 5 would be a glut. But I'm going to go with, when we're talking about terminology, and we're talking about it in the United States, I'm going to go with the man who came up with the term for 4 strikes in a row, Rob Stone's hambone.
Oh,
it's a hambone.
That's a good one. All right.
So then I read the origin of hambone today, and that was amazing. That it like initially annoyed purist bowlers because they didn't like different terms.
Was he doing commentary for bowling?
Yes.
Is that why? Yeah.
Yep. And then it appears to have taken on popularity to the extent that I think the last time he did an event, somebody got one and yelled it at him. So there you go. So I'm saying 4 goals by 1 player is a hambone.
Okay, so I'm all in on that, but I did have my own suggestion.
What you got?
It's based on brace. 4 goals should be a Vishnu.
A Vishnu?
The 4-armed Hindu god. So 4 goals is a Vishnu.
See, I would have gone with, I can't remember his name now, the bad guy in Mortal Kombat who has 4 arms, who I really wish I could remember, but I can't.
I know who you mean, though.
Yeah.
I know who you mean.
That's going to annoy me for a while now.
But I'm going hambone. Hambone's good. All right, so 2 goals is a brace.
Yeah.
Because it's your arms from the old French. 4 goals is a hambone.
All right.
Thanks to Rob Stone.
Next one is a phrase.
Yeah.
And it's flattered to deceive. Whoever put this one in, because we did this via basically like a standard form, right?
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily know who asked about these.
It's anonymous.
But we went with ones kind of like in the first 3 rounds of these shows, at least, that were asked a couple times. Flatter to deceive showed up a couple of different times.
Oh, did it?
With the question, I sometimes hear this on commentary or post-match analysis, usually referring to individual players. For example, Adam Lallana is the one I most associate with the phrase, and it appears to be negative.
Yes, you'd say, like, this player flattered to deceive in this game.
Yeah.
I have an answer. Do you have an answer?
Yes, I believe I do, and it's kind of long and involved.
Oh, let's go for that.
Do you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, it does seem like it is only used in sports.
Yeah.
And Basically, it's a performance that looks good, but the results don't bear that out over the long term.
Yes, that sounds about right to me.
And so, if we go with like two different definitions of it, I've got Oxford Dictionaries. It appears promising, but it ultimately disappoints. Or, more to the point, it's one of the definitions of flatter is to give an unrealistically favorable impression of.
I wrote down the same
too?
dictionary definition. Yeah, but then you deceive by not actually delivering on what looks like a good performance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah? So it's basically like if you're doing a bunch of like memorable stuff, like if you're doing big step overs and you like force one play that leads to a corner kick but nothing really comes of that, then you maybe don't have like overall as a productive game as you would have liked. Maybe you don't execute the manager's game plan. Then you'll remember the highlights, but overall it's not that good of a performance.
So why would Adam Lallana be most associated with this? So because I think of Lallana as actually quite an effective player. Is it just because he looks smooth on the ball, so everyone then expects it's going to result in something?
Honestly, I think it's because
Liverpool have so much possession.
if you were to ask me, what do I most associate with Adam Lallana, it would be like industry. It would be like how hard he works and how he's all over the pitch and doing all this stuff. But it doesn't always lead to like payout in the end. Same thing with England, actually, in the past Euros.
You mean England in general?
Yeah, well, no. But Adam Lallana for England. That he was the one who was always running, always working hard. He covered the most distance, and I think you get this idea of him as this crazy hard worker, and he is. But I think sometimes when the results don't come or it doesn't actually lead to anything, people can say, "Oh, he flatters to deceive," because his statistics might be good in certain categories but poor elsewhere.
Okay, yeah. So it's like something promising that ultimately results in nothing, and there is an element of deception in there, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, this is why it's a confusing phrase, I think. Adam Lallana's not trying to deceive you.
No,
you know what I'm saying? It's not like he's set out to trick you into thinking he's good and then he's not.
So that's
why it's a weird phrase.
Yes, and sorry for interrupting, but I forgot that key point. That when I was looking this up, it seemed like a lot of the debate was over whether or not they have intentionally deceived, as though they're like doing something to disguise something else, or it's an intentional act that leads to deception. And it's more so like, no, it's just sort of the flashiness of the performance covers up or maybe makes you think about that and not about the maybe deficiencies in the game.
Can I give another example that's not Adam Lallana? Because I'm a big fan of Adam Lallana. I don't think it's fair to associate that with him. I would say Freddie Adu, both in games I've watched him in and the arc of his career. If we're going to use this phrase, flattered to deceive.
Yeah.
Because it looks promising, where everyone was very excited, right? And then it ultimately didn't really pan out the way people hoped it would.
Yeah.
But also, when you watched him play, he would have beautiful moments where he would like take a left-footed touch and then hit beautiful left-footed balls, and there'd be really good moments of skill. But ultimately, his impact on a game, because of his sort of, I would say his tactical awareness was not ever that great. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of stories of him not sort of putting in the full effort and this and that.
No, I think
flattered to deceive may be a good phrase for Freddie Adu.
I think it might be, maybe he'll be the poster child for it, because that, again, we've talked about this many times on the show, but that is it's a consistent refrain we've heard about him. Is he's very flashy and good on the ball, but he doesn't execute the game plan. He doesn't necessarily fulfill his manager's tactical instructions. That is probably the definition of flattered to deceive. Looks flashy, but doesn't do what he's supposed to do.
And just to cover my ass a bit, I don't want to be too harsh on Freddie Adu. I honestly, we're going to talk about Freddie Adu for a little second.
I don't think anyone's going to be too upset with you.
But I think people are too harsh on Freddie Adu, and I don't want to pile on. I honestly think all the stuff that happened to him as a 14-year-old were not good for his mentality and his career. And I sort of think like Major League Soccer and US Soccer and Pepsi and Pele and all those people did not help in terms of forming his attitude to soccer.
I don't know, Daryl. I think we have a long, proud history in this country of successful child actors. I don't know what you're possibly talking about. They always turn out normal and well-adjusted.
So there you go. There's flatter to deceive.
Indeed. Before we move on, I've thought long and hard about this, and I want to say I'm changing 4 goals to a Goro.
A Goro?
That's the character in Mortal Kombat. It was really annoying me. I don't know what to think about this.
Were you Googling? Did you find it?
No, I was halfway through Googling because the one that kept sticking out was Motaro, which is a different Mortal Kombat character. Okay. And then it came to me about halfway through, mostly because of a terrible Christopher Lambert reading. Because I think he plays Raiden in the movie, if we want to keep going with Mortal Kombat.
Were you a big Mortal Kombat gamer?
I never really owned many different gaming systems. I think I owned the original Nintendo and N64, and that's about it. So I think my friend owned Mortal Kombat, and it was amazing, and I couldn't stop playing it. And so I think the very first incarnation of Mortal Kombat sticks with me for that reason.
All right. Well, just as Mortal Kombat asked you to finish him, we should finish this segment and move on to the next one.
Fair enough.
Professional foul, professional foul or tactical foul. They're the same term basically, right? They're interchangeable. But what do they mean? I think this is a good question because you'll hear this a lot when you're watching TV in commentary. They'll say, "Oh, there's a professional foul," and I can understand if you don't have the background to that, you're just like, what?
It's very professionally done.
He got paid just for that?
Yeah, exactly.
He gets a $10.99 miscellaneous for that foul?
It does lead to the idea that they're like enforcers in soccer in the way there used to be or still are in hockey. Yeah. But not quite. No, it's essentially, and there's really no difference between tactical foul, professional foul, other than that.
Cynical foul?
Yeah, it's essentially, it's committed in order to prevent. Generally, it's to prevent a scoring opportunity or an opportunity that could lead to a goal, basically.
So it's done cynically, right?
Yes.
The obvious example is a counter-attack. If there's a counter-attack starting and you're sort of not the last defender, but you're, say, one of the midfielders, and you know there's lots of players behind you, and you know that some guy is going to go past you, you'll think, like, I'll take a foul here, give away a free kick, because a free kick in this spot is much less dangerous than letting him advance the other way. Yeah. Right? So you take the free kick, maybe take a yellow card if you have to, but you know that you've sort of broken up an attack by fouling.
Yes.
So it's cynical fouling in that way.
And so you'll see it sometimes when the player gets away and the other player just pulls the jersey back. It's an obvious foul. It's going to be a yellow card. That's the professional foul.
You're not even trying to get away with it, right? You're just trying to stop the play.
And so there's two other key examples that I would say come to mind, for me at least. One of them is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, way back when. There's a video, you can see it on YouTube, of he sprints 100 yards from a Man United corner to hack down a player, gets a red card for it, but does it like 1 foot outside of their penalty area. Right. So concedes a free kick as opposed to a breakaway.
Instead of conceding a PK.
And I think on the replay you can see him mouth the words "I had to" as he walks out. So that's one. But then the other one that I think
that's the definition of a professional foul. When a player feels I had to do this. Yeah.
And the other one that I think maybe people don't think of, because professional fouls, as we've said, it tends to be pulling back the jersey, fouling. It would be Luis Suarez.
Yes.
It's the handball for Uruguay against Ghana, where it's like your denial of goal scoring opportunity. That's why he didn't get the red, or he did get a red in that one, not for the biting. There it is. But you're obviously denying a goal scoring opportunity. But rather than the ball going in, you're at least giving a chance. If you're Uruguayan, I think that's the way you see that one. You're giving your team still a chance.
So if you're new to soccer, maybe this was against Ghana. It was the quarterfinal, I think. It was in extra time, and there wasn't much time left. So Luis Suarez made the calculation in his head, and he's a pretty sharp guy. That I'll get sent off for this, but the ball won't go in, and then there'll be a penalty which they might miss, which they did. Uruguay end up in the semi-finals.
Asamoah Gyan missed that one, made the penalty shootout one, but it didn't matter because Uruguay advanced.
Yep.
There it is.
Yeah, and Suarez didn't get to play in the semi.
He did not, but I'm sure he was okay with it.
So there you go. That's a good example of a professional foul. Another example I read sort of off of soccer, if you're looking for some sort of analogy, is the hack-a-shack technique, where Shaquille O'Neal not great at free throws, so people would foul him on the court, make him take the free throw. It's worth accepting that free throw because it's not as dangerous as having a team be an open play.
There we are.
Right?
Yeah.
So any others?
I'm sure there's lots out there, but I think the key thing to remember here is that part of this can be confusing in terms of how it gets used, because I think we'll sometimes say, it was a good, in the same conversation, we'll say, it was a nice, or not nice, but it was a tactical foul, you understand why you had to do that, and then you might respond it's obviously going to be a professional foul, it's a yellow card, and that might be confusing because you might think those are two different things, but they're essentially referring to the same thing.
Okay, final question. Have you ever done one?
I don't think so, because I've only been booked 3 times in my entire playing career. So I don't think I have. Mostly because I don't think I would have the ability to do it and not get a red card. Because there is that line as well. I think that's part of the reason why it's called a professional foul, is because you
need a 4-year degree to do it.
Yes, obviously. But it's also that you're doing it in such a way that you are telegraphing, I am doing this to get a yellow card, but I'm not doing it with malice or significant ill intent, I should say. Yeah. And I don't know if I would be able to properly convey that, because you will see the tackles from behind that you get booked for, and that could be a red card if you were just a little bit harder, harsher in the challenge. Have you?
I did it once in a pre-season friendly for Moseley, which is a team I played for in Birmingham, Moseley Town, but didn't get booked, but I think because it was pre-season. It was I was playing centre-back and I got pulled quite far out wide and up the field. Guy was just way faster than me, and this was in my younger days. I'd be like 25. And he was accelerating past me down the wing. I just grabbed the back of his shirt and held on, and ref gave a free kick. I'm sure if that was a league game, if it was a league game, it was a yellow.
Yeah. I guess
I don't do it often, though.
I've probably done it like in pickup and just like goofing around, but I think that's a little different.
Yeah, I can see you doing it to me if I went past you.
I probably have done it to you, that's what I'm realizing.
Wasn't that funny? And I'm like, no, I was dribbling away from you.
Yeah, but I think that's a big old if on if you were to dribble past me. So there we are. Should we move on to number 5? When a keeper has a great game, they say, stand on their heads. He stood on his head, she stood on her head. What does that mean, Daryl Grove?
It means they're doing sort of impossible, incredible things.
Yes.
And things that you wouldn't expect to be able to do. I'm pretty sure it's as simple as that.
Okay, well, so you could, as with anything, as with any sports term, there are a couple different like kind of definitions of it and explanations.
All right, this is why you're Professor Emeritus.
There we are. All right. Well, it generally means to make numerous sprawling or dramatic saves. And while it's used in soccer, I feel like it has its origins in hockey.
Really?
Yes, because from what I understand, from what I read, it used to be illegal for a hockey goalie to fall down while making saves. They had to stay on their skates, so they could not fall on the ground. Yeah. Nowadays, you can you can, if you're a goalkeeper, you can collapse.
In hockey, we're talking here.
Yeah, I think it's called like stacking pads when you basically block off options. When that rule change occurred, when goalkeepers or goalies, not goalkeepers, they're goalies, goaltenders. Yep. Yeah. When they were allowed to fall down, it was in 1918 was the rule change. NHL president, then NHL president,
100 years ago.
Frank Calder remarked they could stand on their head if they wanted to. So I think it leads to this idea that goalkeepers can kind of do whatever they have to do to keep the puck out of the net or to keep the goal out of the net.
And that makes sense, right? We've seen some Bill Hamid saves. I can't remember who it was against. I've forgotten, but we saw some DC United early on the season. Yeah. And he was doing like incredible athletic feats.
That's right.
Keep the ball out of the net. That was an example to me of someone standing on their head.
Yeah. And I think Tim Howard as well is the most common one, or most like the one that comes most readily to mind would be Tim Howard versus Belgium, when it was like 9,000 shots on target, and he saved most of them.
The Secretary of Defense and standing on his head.
Indeed.
All right, I think that is pretty explanatory for that one, yeah?
I think so.
Fair enough.
So thank you to Frank Calder in 1918.
Hockey's more than 100 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's very old.
All right. Okay, today's show is sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. Roughneck Scarves have been a sponsor for a long time. They are the makers of the Total Soccer Show scarf, the hello and welcome ... scarf, and as well as being the official scarf provider for US soccer. So you can get a US national team scarf through Roughneck Scarves, and MLS and USL and the NCAA.
And Total Soccer Show.
And Total Soccer Show. Did we mention them?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we know them or not. Yeah.
But you can also make custom scarves.
You can.
With Roughneck Scarves. You can sort of design a scarf and they will produce it for you in bulk if that's what you want. So we put out the call. If you were going to design an Arsene Wenger scarf, what would it look like? We got responses from, it looks like, some Arsenal fans and at least one Spurs fan. We've got some great responses on Twitter.
Yes, the first one coming from Tom Rosenhammer. He says it would be made out of economy French material. I did not see the play on one side. I alone decide on the other, and it would be impossible to remove from your neck.
The last part's my favourite. So another response came from John Adams, who says, a picture of a blue cockerel, for France. Totally for France.
I believe John Adams is a Tottenham supporter.
Who have a blue cockerel as their...
Worth noting there, yeah. BV3 says Wenger out on one side for October through April, and in Arsene we trust on the other for May through September.
I feel like that may not happen at the start of next season.
Yeah, or at the... I mean, it is May now. I don't think there's many people saying in Wenger we trust right now.
Matthew says it would have easy to find built-in pockets.
Yep.
We got many tweets on that theme of pockets. Should say we're not going to get everybody's response in. We just picked a few of our favourites. This is in relation to the famous clip of Arsene Wenger not being able to get his hand in his pocket.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any zipper jokes in here. But Leo Novakovsky says a timeline beginning with trophies, then fourth place trophies, in quotes, then no trophies, ...
Paul Magaletti says, not sure what should be on the scarf, scarf, but you should be able to buy it for $20 and sell it for $30.
So I guess he's building a scarf in 2011?
We talked about this off air, right? And you said that actually hasn't happened that much recently.
No.
But it used to be that he would buy someone like, say, Thierry Henry for less than market price, sell him for more.
Yep.
Same for Cesc Fabregas,
Adebayor.
Robin van Persie, Manuel Adebayor, Patrick Vieira.
Yep.
I know came kind of cheap. Yeah, Arsene Wenger hasn't done that for a while.
Not so much, no.
But you could buy a roughneck scarf for $20 because they're $25 with the TSS discount. You use Total Soccer Show, all one word, at checkout. You get 20% off. I think 20% of 25 is $5, which means a TSS scarf or any other scarf through the Roughneck store, $20. You could try and sell it on for $30 in a sort of pre-2011 Arsene Wenger style. What you do at that point is your business.
No, all right. Next one, Drew Clausen says, one side would start out as a nice, well-knit scarf. It would start to unravel around the middle of the scarf, and it would be tattered on the other end.
We said scarf, not season.
Harsh.
Good stuff from Drew. I like that. Final one today from Dylan Dolisi says, it would say Wenger out, and it would be a giant scarf attached to the back of a plane.
It's a big scarf. That's going to be a very large custom order, I think.
It would, yeah.
Yes.
But 20% off. So if you go to roughneckscarves.com, you can get 20% off for your big scarf plane banner that you may be creating by using the code Total Soccer Show, all one word, 20% off at roughneckscarves.com. Thank you to Roughneck Scarves.
And thank you, Daryl Grove, for explaining the next term in our terminology show. That would be gaffer. Gaffer being used as manager or coach. What does it mean, Daryl Grove?
Why are you asking me specifically?
Because I know the answer to the next one.
So this is a British thing.
Yep.
I thought is maybe the reason you were asking me. So the reason that managers and coaches are called gaffer, especially in England, is because gaffer means boss.
Okay.
It means you're the boss. And the reason for this is kind of historical. Okay, it's a contraction of the word
16th century.
Yeah, godfather. Yep. Like if you were sort of an elderly, respected man, you'd be called godfather. That got contracted to gaffer. Then that became sort of the affectionate nickname that you would use for your foreman or your supervisor at work, right?
So we've done similar research on this one.
The guy you would report to, this happened around the 1800s. The guy you would report to is
1841, I believe, is when it started.
Is the gaffer, right? Yeah. And I grew up with this phrase, like the person at work who's your boss, it's the gaffer, if you're on sort of friendly-ish terms with them. So really, it reflects the working class roots of soccer in England. That's why the manager is called the gaffer.
There we are. So basically, 16th century term for... or what was it? A contraction of godfather leading to boss or foreman?
Yep.
There we are.
So so the boss is the gaffer. But it's also a phrase that is weirdly still around in the movie industry. If you're the electrician in charge of lighting, you're a gaffer. Yeah. That's why there's gaffer tape.
Yeah, but why? What does that have to do with Godfather? Or because you're not
it's
the boss.
It's a contraction of Godfather.
Yeah, but you're not the boss of lighting. You're not,
you are.
You're not the Godfather of lighting, are you?
On that movie, you're the gaffer of the lighting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can only have one gaffer?
I don't know, that's just a weird phrase that got carried over to that industry for some reason. It's only come to America in that way. All and then the rest of England, it's just slang for boss.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we are. So that's gaffer. Should we move on to pace?
Yeah, I was confused by this one.
Okay.
So the question was, pace, is it different to other terms meaning fast, or is it the same?
So it is essentially, I think it's used kind of interchangeably to mean they're fast, they're quick, whatever. But in reality, there are two different ideas when it comes to speed and pace. So pace is the speed at which someone or something moves, or with which something happens or changes. So basically, speed is how fast something is going. If you are running, speed would be you're running 6 miles an hour, which is kind of a slow mile, but whatever. Maybe you're taking your time. Pace would be the time versus the distance. So you'd be going 10 minutes per mile. That means your pace.
Okay, yeah.
So in terms of
that's why you have pace runners, right?
Yeah.
That set the pace if you're trying to hit the record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then
a pace car in NASCAR or Formula One.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can basically that can mean, as I said, they're generally used interchangeably in sport, but you could be using it as a way to say the emphasis on the time versus the distance as opposed to the distance versus the time.
See, I think I disagree. I agree with your sort of dictionary definition of this, but if they're just saying Pione Sisto of Celta Vigo has good pace, they just mean he's fast, right? I think it's interchangeable and it's just commentators reaching for different versions of the word so they can mix it up a bit.
Yeah, I think so. But I think
say he's fast, he's speedy, he's got pace.
Yeah, I think that may be sort of an evolution of the term, though. Whereas
definitely.
in the past, it may well have meant speed was how fast he is from like sprint or acceleration wise versus pace was how fast he is over the total length of the game.
Right.
But I think, yes, you're absolutely right. That when we say pace on pace, we're saying he's fast.
And I also think, just as a way of making it easier, it's hard to like. Being fast is a thing that's hard to say that someone possesses.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't say that like in his early days Ryan Giggs had fastness.
Yeah.
You would say in his early days Ryan Giggs had pace.
Yeah.
Or he was pacey.
Well, you could say he was fast.
Yeah, but you can't say he possesses it. You can't possess fastness in terms of a comfortable way to say it if you're a commentator. That's honestly the reason I think pace has become this word, is because it's short and easy to say and easy to sort of apply it as an attribute to a player. That make sense?
Yeah.
All
I think it also is when we've reached the era of 9,000 word think pieces on players who are quick. You got to find different words to use, and that's what you end up with.
Thank you, synonyms.com.
Yeah.
All right, next one. This is an interesting one. Relegation 6-pointer.
Yeah.
Why do people use the phrase 6-pointer? Because you don't get 6 points for a win in any game.
Right. And this is one that I really do think, again, similar to, I forget what the one was earlier, flatter to deceive, where it's like this idea that he's actually trying to deceive. There is some, I think, confusion about like, do you actually get 6 points, or is it like one team gets 3, the team gets -3? And basically, it's just the idea. It's usually in the context of a relegation fight. If it's two teams playing each other,
and they're both in the fight, right? They're both in the relegation fight.
Yeah, exactly. So in this situation right now, we have Swansea in 17th, Hull in 18th. If they were to play each other, basically, if say Swansea win, Swansea have gotten 3 points, and essentially because of that, Hull City are 3 points further back. So you look at that not necessarily even as Swansea just getting 3 and Hull getting nothing, but as Swansea moving 3 points away, Hull City moving 3 points back. 3 + 3 is 6.
Here's how I wrote this down. You gain 3 points if you win a 6-pointer. And at the same time, you deny your opponents 3 points.
Yes.
That's why it's 6 points.
Yeah, that's probably the better way to put it. Yeah,
it's the more succinct way, right? But I have a better idea. I think any time that something is talked about as a 6-pointer, the league should make it official, where the winning team actually gets 6 points.
What?
It's like a double your money round. Yeah.
What?
Just to liven up like relegation battles, the league should come in and say, okay, this is an actual 6-pointer game.
So just the league arbitrarily decides this game is worth 6 points?
Yeah, this is the future.
One of your worst ideas ever, I have to say.
I don't really think that should happen. You might say that when I came up with that idea, I was fluffing my lines.
There we are.
That's our next piece of terminology.
But before we get to that one, I do want to say I feel like a relegation 6-pointer is another one that gets kind of used too often, because I remember this season, I said it's usually used in terms of relegation, but I saw
it could be a title race as well.
It can be a title race, it can be 4th place as well. And I think even like in October, I heard people referring to like Chelsea v Tottenham as like a 6-pointer. It's just like, oh, well, let's calm it down here for a second. It's a game.
It just means it's a game where you have the opportunity to beat a rival that's near to you and gain points while denying them points so they can't keep pace with you, right? If there was a Chelsea Spurs game towards the end of the season, maybe a couple of weeks ago, that would have been a title race 6-pointer.
Yeah.
It can't happen now.
Yeah,
because Chelsea are probably going to beat West Brom on Friday and claim the title.
I would say so. Yes. So to get to the final term, the one that you already mentioned, or the final phrase rather, fluffed his or her line.
So this has its origins in British theatre. In football, it is if you I think of it as like if you miss an easy chance, they would say Gonzalo Higuain fluffed his lines when he had a chance to score in the 2014 World Cup final, to make up an example at random.
Yep. Nicely done. And I would say this is one that I, if you had asked me to guess, would have been completely wrong as well.
So what would you have guessed?
Because I honestly thought it had to do with sailing. Because I thought it had to do with
the sailing lines?
It's like you're not like tightening your sails fast enough. You're not pulling the line so the sail goes up, so you catch the wind, so you get to go. So you like fluff them, and now you're kind of like stuck where you are. You've missed your chance to accelerate or make something happen.
Got it.
And so I was kind of, when I was trying to figure out what this meant, I kept looking at it as a phrase and not breaking it down into like his or her line, like, oh, that's referring to a line reading. To fluff is to mess it up, I guess.
Yep.
That makes way more sense.
So it's a British theatre phrase. It is if you're in a play and it's like your turn to say your line and you just like either like mispronounce it or just blank it and forget it and just get it wrong, you are said to have fluffed your lines. The actor fluffed his lines.
And I chased this back as far as I could. It seems to have originated in 1884 in theatre circles.
The phrase to fluff your lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no one seems to be entirely certain where it comes from, other than there are possibly obscene ideas behind it, which we will leave at that.
Like that's the reason why you wouldn't be able to speak properly.
I think so.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Yeah, we won't go into that. I will say, I mentioned this phrase to my wife. I said, hey, have you ever heard of this phrase?
Yeah.
And she said, do you mean flub your lines?
Yeah.
So it seems the American equivalent of fluff your
flub.
lines is flub your lines. And a flub is just kind of slang for a blunder, right? So fluff is kind of the same. It's a slang for a blunder in England. So fluff your lines means just you get it wrong. So if you miss an open goal, you have fluffed your lines.
You could also call that pulling an Higuain if you were so inclined. But yeah, I take your point.
That's Champions League finalist Higuain to you, sir.
Very true.
Good time to mention, we recorded this show today because we didn't know what was going to happen in the Atletico Real game, but we assumed Real would be comfortably through to the final. If things change, if there's more drama than expected at the Calderon, we will have an Atletico versus Real review show for you on Thursday.
I have also kept that score up, and I can tell you that we probably don't need to urgently review that game. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah. I'll check in on it later.
All right.
I'll check in on it later.
So instead of doing that, should we move on to our scouting report of the day?
Well, I just want to let people know that I'll put a link to the original sort of request for terminology document in the show notes. If you have terminology you would like explained, you can click on that link and you can add your terms to the document.
So with that said, shall we get on to our scouting report of the day?
Yeah, it's essentially a little update from yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about some of the US U17s, some of the US U20s.
Josh Sargent is both.
Yeah, and there were a couple U20s that we did not discuss because they were not involved. We've had a report on why that might be the case.
So yeah, Andrew Baird emailed to say that Josh Perez was not on the U20 World Cup roster. This is the Fiorentina winger, nephew of Hugo Perez, guy we're really excited about. He has played Serie A football for Fiorentina, not on the U20 roster. And essentially, it's because Tab Ramos, the U20 coach, said it's not that he doesn't rate Josh Perez, is it?
He said in a press conference, quote, in terms of the European clubs, he was asked basically, did clubs cooperate?
Yeah.
In terms of the European clubs, we didn't get any cooperation from Schalke at all at any time for their players. And we had very little cooperation from Fiorentina about Josh Perez. Other than that, we've gotten all the cooperation we needed.
So that's why, no Josh Perez because Fiorentina didn't want to let him go. And no, it would be Weston McKennie and Nick Tattagu is how I'm going to pronounce it, from Schalke. Didn't get released. He specifically didn't mention Haji Wright, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how old Haji Wright is. I'm assuming
he is very much eligible. I've been looking at Twitter from Brian Sciaretta, Travis Clark, Will Parchman today. Tab Ramos sort of specifically just doesn't invite Haji Wright to camp. I'm guessing he just doesn't rate him for some reason. But even if he did, Schalke would not have let him come along.
Yeah, and worth noting as well that since last we reported what Schalke played their U19 semifinal, first leg of the U19 semifinal against Bayern Munich, won 3-1. Nick Tattagu drew a penalty, I believe on a ball from Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie also scored in that game, and Nick Tattagu then got an assist for the third goal. Is that all accurate, Mr. Grove?
I don't think Weston McKennie scored.
Oh, yes, my mistake. It was Weston McKennie, I believe, who plays in Tattagu to draw the penalty. It was Haji Wright who scores the third goal. That would be the one assisted by Nick Tattagu.
Okay, there you go. But useful stuff from the US, what would be US under-20s that we can all be excited about at Schalke. It almost sort of proves Schalke's point that those players are important to them and they're taking the U19 championship very seriously. I'm trying to give this some sort of silver lining. I would much prefer to see them playing for the U20s at the World Cup.
Well, that was part of Andrew's question, at least in regards to Josh Perez. Is this a positive? Is this Fiorentina saying like, no, we don't want to risk him getting injured. We don't want him being sent away, because he has been making the 18 for Fiorentina. Whether or not he's going to get any playing time for the rest of the season, I can't say with confidence.
I mean, you could see it as a positive if you want. It means they're valued by their clubs. It means they're beyond youth tournaments in some ways. Right?
Yeah, I think
for example, we said Zelalem is involved because Arsenal are not expecting to play him in their first team. And even VVV were not that excited about having Zelalem in their first team. So therefore he's available. Like, it's great for him that he plays in the tournament, but maybe it's better for Perez and for Tattagu and Weston McKennie that they're playing for their teams.
And I would say you could look at like Cameron Carter-Vickers, who has been released by Tottenham. You could maybe make the same argument, except that I think he's been injured, he being CCV, and so he's recovering from injury. So Tottenham probably not likely to need him, or even if they were likely to need him, he's injured, so it probably makes sense to release him, let him go play with the U.S. national team. Fiorentina, there's a chance they might need Perez, and he is fit, and maybe they do need a youngster to come in and get some goals or do the things that Josh Perez will do, and so even if there's like a 1% chance, I imagine if you're Fiorentina who pay his paycheck, you say, no, we're going to hold on to him.
There's the other element to this is European teams do not take the U20 tournaments as seriously as, say, the US does. The reason being that there's a U21 age group that's for like the European Championship, for the UEFA European Championship, and therefore I think the U20 thing is kind of devalued in some ways. So I can see Schalke being like, the what?
Yeah, I mean,
what's happening? What tournament?
Yeah, because
look at Germany's roster. It's not that strong when you see their U20 roster.
Yeah, and even I could be totally wrong, but even like the Olympic playoff that the United States had with Colombia, didn't they essentially send their U21 team with a couple other names in there?
I don't
U20
remember.
team, I think it was the one that competed in the U20 World Cup. I think it's all very like it's just confusing because you have all these different age groups with different teams valuing different competitions as a result.
But it's no coincidence that it's the German team and an Italian team not valuing the U20 World Cup that much in terms of a player's development, and the US being surprised, like, what?
Yeah,
what is going on? I think I was saying to you earlier, if I was in charge of FIFA for, let's say, a week, one of the things I'd try to do is standardize
aside
age
from
groups.
Inserting a 6-point game.
I mean that would be second day in office. Second day in office. But I'd like to get sort of a standardised age group. So there's a U21 World Cup, U21 European Championship. Everything is the same age group. So everybody just knows what the age limit is, and everybody knows what the tournaments are. Instead of these weird sort of age groups that are happening with U20s, U21s.
The only problem I could potentially see, and maybe why these different age groups exist in the first place, is just that, like, I don't know when the next Euro U21 championship is. Is it this summer or is it next summer?
I can't remember.
Because that's the only thing I could see is, like,
summer.
if you have them all rotating at different times, then you might have people who might fall through the cracks and miss certain tournaments because you're not going to have, like, the U20 tournament the same year you're having the U20 Euros. You're not going to have the U20 World Cup at the same time that you have the U20 Euros, and so you maybe have to stagger the age groups a little bit to make up for that.
That might be why it happens.
Yeah.
Okay, I would bring you on as my professor emeritus when I take on my FIFA
You'd
duties.
be disappointed.
Speaking of me getting things wrong, one correction, actually double correction, because more than one person let me know about it from yesterday's show. I mentioned that it was going to be Dortmund v Bayern in the DFB Pokal, the German Cup final. It's not, is it, Taylor?
It is not. That already happened. Dortmund eliminated Bayern Munich. They will be playing Timmy Chandler's Eintracht Frankfurt in the DFB Pokal final.
Also exciting, though, because now we get two Americans,
I'd
right?
say more exciting.
More exciting.
At least from an American perspective, yeah.
And more chance of Pulisic lifting some silverware?
I would say so.
Or, I've just realised, we can't lose, because even if Pulisic doesn't lift some silverware, which obviously we're excited about, Timmy Chandler lifts the cup, lifts the German cup.
You've just realised this?
I'm not great at math. But yes, right? It's a zero-sum game.
I think it's because
the sum is always
I think I talked about
American
this
wins.
like 2 months ago on the goal mouth. That's why this is all kind of in my brain.
You've already done the calculation.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Because that was back when I think the other semifinal was Gladbach versus Frankfurt. So it was kind of like, unless Munich wins the whole thing, Americans have a good chance.
All right, so good news. Good news. I got the correction in, and America wins the German Cup.
Yeah, there we go.
Good stuff. Also, I should let you know that if you want to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, you can do so at totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. And thank you again to today's sponsor, Roughneck Scarves. The URL and coupon is what, Taylor?
That would be roughneckscarves.com with the promo code Total Soccer Show, all one word, all uppercase.
And that gets you 20% off.
It does.
And it'll be in the show notes if you didn't manage to write that down real fast while we...
I'm going to start promising to have more stuff in the show notes when you're the one who's doing the show notes.
Yeah, you know, so I'm happy to promise it when I'm doing it as well, not just when you do it. Yeah. All right, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to do some terminology with me today.
And Joe Grove, thank you for including all of the different links to all of the different explanations for the terms we did today in the show notes. Thank you for that.
Actually, I'll put the terms so people can skip to...
Okay, that's good of
you.
you.
There you go. I made a promise. And I'll keep it. Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow with some listener questions, so we'll talk to you then.